all the different employment services that we provide. Now, I recognize a lot of you because we work with a lot of you, and that's kind of our main thing, our main goal is to try to collaborate with as many different organizations as we possibly can. We were talking about that earlier. I think it's because the individuals we serve are they going to go to Voc Rehab, and they can go to SE Works, and they can go to us, and they can go to Thrive Upstate. They're going to check out all the different services that we provide. So we want to make sure that we're working with everybody as best as we can. And part of that is to let you know what are the services that we actually provide and what do we do. So we're going to start by at least telling you a little bit about what Able South Carolina is, if you guys aren't as familiar. So we're what's called a Center for Independent Living. And a lot of times people hear that and they think it's a residential facility, but in actuality we're just a nonprofit. But the centers are all across the U.S. and each of them is their own private nonprofit. And we assist people with disabilities to become more independent for themselves. And we do that a whole bunch of different ways. Obviously employment is going to be that big one. Now being on desk page. Okay, no. All right, so another thing about being a SIL is we're community-based. So we are actually going out in the community. We're talking to folks like you. We are meeting our consumers in their homes or at the library. We're trying to get out in the community as much as we possibly can, not stay in the office, which is a lot of what you guys do at the same time also. We're cross-disability, so it doesn't matter what your disability is. We're still going to work with individuals. We don't require any kind of medical documentation. We just require that that individual, signs a piece of paper that says, yes, I do have a disability. But, for someone like me, I could say, hey, undiagnosed ADHD. And they'd be like, okay, well, you're cool with that. Just, sign the paper that says you have ADHD and you're good to go. So we don't have a whole lot of kind of hoops that we have to jump through in order to kind of start the services. We're consumer driven, which means the people we work with are the ones that decide how they want their services provided to them, what goals they want to work on, how they want to work on those goals. Just because we believe that choices is that main, key to an individual being successful. If we're making the choices for them, then they're not really guiding the case. They're not going to buy into it. But if they're making all their own choices, setting their own goals, they're going to be more likely to actually go through and finish what they're doing and achieve those goals. And then obviously, like I said before, we're our own private nonprofit. One thing about us is since we are federally funded and mandated federally through the Rehab Act of 1973, it says we have to have at least 50% of our staff have to have some kind of disability, and the same thing with our board. At Able, we try to kind of really push that as much as we can. So our staff covers about 80%, depending on turnover, for individuals with disabilities, and with our board, it's about 50%. It's a lot hard to find board members with a disability. Now, as far as the services that we provide, I'm going to start with our basic services. So, just working with individuals one-on-one. What are some of the things that we actually do? Those independent living skills. And for employment, it starts with those basic things. It's going to be how do I write a resume? What are the parts of the resume that I need to know? What's a cover letter? What is the reason why I want a cover letter? So we kind of explain that to them. We teach them how to read job postings and use those to personalize their cover letter and personalize their resumes for people. And we also work on interview skills. A lot of people may not feel comfortable. When I say interview skills, I'm talking about start to finish. Not just the questions that will be asked, but what's appropriate dress to be there. How should they be behaving when they're there, making sure that they come on time. Calling people, doing all the things that they need to do. And then with the self-advocacy skills, a lot of times I think people are going to run into barriers when they're trying to get employed. All of you are aware of that. So whether it's, hey, I can't get on I'm trying to get on your website and fill out the application because that's the only way you can fill out an application is online, but it's not accessible for screen readers. And so instead of just saying, okay, well, I and I'll find something else, I'm not going to be part of it. You know, teaching them those self-advocacy skills so that they can go out there and advocate for their needs so that they can get those things, wherever it's going to be in whatever part of the employment process. Also, reasonable accommodations. A lot of times young people are they have those accommodations when they're in school, but they may not understand how that translates into the workforce. Or maybe they've just never had an accommodation, or feel like, I don't want to have an accommodation because then people may discriminate against me. And so understanding what that process is like and what they're entitled to and what the ADA provides for them. And that kind of goes along with disclosing their disability as well. You know, for me, I roll into a room, I'm disclosing as soon as I'm here. But for individuals who may have a learning disability or a psychiatric disability or any kind of other invisible disability, disclosing is a scary thing for them, you know, because they're worried that they may get discriminated against. And so knowing how to navigate that process is a big deal, and I feel like at ABLE we kind of have a little bit of a leg up just because we're all people with disabilities who have gone through that process before. So we kind of have a better idea of how to get to, not to say that other people with disabilities, you know, can't help them navigate that process, but you know, it's just one thing when you've gone through that and you've actually experienced it that way. And then we also talked about some like the employment rights that they have through the ADA. We want to help them develop a career plan. Some people will come and say, I want to get a job. Like, okay, well, it's a little bit more complicated than that. Let's start to break things down and, you know, okay, well, I want a job so that I can, you know, earn enough money so that I can start to go back to college, and then I really want to work on that. And so we kind of want to help them develop that career plan, start to finish, and understand setting those long-term and short-term goals and the benefits of doing that. And then also, we want to provide information to them about other service providers that are out there. They're doing the same things. They're doing those employment services. Because like for say Voc Rehab, you know, I sent a lady over there that I've been working with because you guys can do like computer training that we can't do. And you can help out with physical therapy that we can't do. Or at SC Works, they have lots of other things that like we can't do. And so that's why we want to let them know, like, hey, you're coming to me with this. You should also work with this other organization, this other organization. Like, so that referral process is a big part of what I do. All right, so now we get to Ticket to Work is another employment services that we provide at ABLE. How many of you know what Ticket to Work is? Sure, some of you guys. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, it's a program put on through Social Security. And what it's for is for people who are receiving SSI or SSDI, and maybe they don't want to receive SSI and SSDI anymore. They want to start working because obviously it's not, they probably aren't making enough through SSI or SSDI to, you know, pay all their bills and do the things that they need to do. So they're deciding, hey, I want to go out and start working now. Okay, well, what does that look like? Okay, how do I do it? I don't want to get the rug pulled out under me. I don't want to go and start working, and then all of a sudden have Social Security come and say, hey, you're working now, you're earning cash, and so you're going to take your check away, and we're going to take your Medicare benefits away, and now you're left with nothing. You know, that's a big fear for people and for parents that are out there as well. What Ticket to Work does is it helps to incrementally assist someone to come off of their benefits in a way that, again, doesn't have that rug pulled out from under them. Things like knowing, hey, you can keep your benefits for up to, or your health care benefits for up to 78 months, things like that. Then we can assist them also with teaching them some of the employment skills that I posted earlier up there, as far as you know, interview skills, resume writing, anything that's going to assist them. But then also, if they're on Ticket to Work, that gives us a little bit more leeway to assist them with actually going out there and targeting certain jobs. And they're like, okay, well, this would be a good job for you. You should go out and apply for this one. Whereas otherwise with ABLE, we're not able to do that quite as much. We're kind of more of, let me teach you how to go out there and target those jobs and find those jobs you want to work with. Whereas if they're working with Ticket to Work, we can actually help go out there and find those exact jobs. So another part of the employment services we provide is not just to consumers, we provide employment services to employers as well. And so some of the ways we do that is through our Able Access, which is kind of a side program that we run in Able, South Carolina. And we do a few different things with Able Access. The first one, kind of the main one, is going through and providing accessibility assessments. Those are on-site physical accessibility assessments. So, you know, what's your parking lot look like? Or is the slope too much? You know, are you able to get in the bathrooms? Things like that. Things that will help them to make their facilities more accessible for people with disabilities. Another part of Able Access that we do is our trainings. So we'll go through and just like kind of the training that we're doing today, we'll go out and give trainings to employers on disability and sensitivity etiquette in the workplace, or knowing about reasonable accommodations, or the benefits of hiring people with disabilities, how to recruit people with disabilities to the workforce. A lot of employers are becoming very interested in hiring people with disabilities just because of where we're at in our workforce right now. But there are some fears out there, and there's some trepidation. And so, you know, with Able Access, we can go through and help say, okay, well, let's give you the training that you need so you're not worried about those things anymore and you know what to do. And then finally, the website assessment. That's becoming a newer thing. People haven't really thought about that as much. How, you know, the access that people provide. Even yesterday, we were at a public forum event for the city parks for some of the stuff they've been doing with the ADA. And there was an individual there who had a hearing disability, and his main thing was, you know, your website may be accessible, but you know, you may be able to go through it with a screen reader, but I'm having trouble going through and navigating to find the information. So that makes it less accessible. So being able to go through and look at those things and find out, hey, can a screen reader or JAWS or something like that, can it read those? But then also, is it navigable for people who are needing those services? So now we're going to talk about Hire Me SC. So this is a campaign that we've been doing for a few years now to try to promote disability employment to different employers in the state. Now I'm going to tell you, I do not run this program. The person that does was wanting to be here, but she's actually having to go to some meetings for it today, so I am here. I'm going to do the best I can with explaining it to you. But if you have certain questions, I may not be able to answer them, so I'll probably refer you out to her. But again, what Hire Me SC is, we're just trying to, it's a campaign. We're trying to let people know why it's so important to bring people with disabilities into the workforce and helping kind of guide the employers to that point. So Hire Me SC is not just an Able South Carolina program. We are the lead for it, but there's a lot of different organizations that are a part of it here. Obviously, you can see some of the, like DDSN, the DD Council, Medicaid, P&A, Walton Options, Department of Ed, Voc Rehab, Family Connections. So there's a lot of different organizations that are involved in what we're doing here. Because it's, again, like I said, collaboration is the key. No one's going to be successful if you go out there and try to do it on your own. If you try to, you know, make changes happen on the island, it's just really hard to. We need to work together. So a big key to Hire Me SC is the idea of employment first, which has been pretty new to South Carolina. And really that idea is just that employment, inclusive, competitive employment should be the first option for people with disabilities. No matter what the disability is, that should be at least their first option for them. Now, whether they choose to go a different route is up to them, but they should at least have that option available to them. So this is just some facts about employment, disability-related employment in South Carolina. So about 7 out of 10 people with disabilities are unemployed right now. And people with disabilities are twice as likely to be unemployed than people without disabilities. And obviously those are huge problems. I think it's a problem. I don't know if you guys agree with me. I would think if you're here right now, you probably do. But that's a huge problem in our state. And so that's kind of where we're coming from, is try to make changes in that aspect. So why are people with disabilities working so infrequently? So obviously there's the educational part of it, right? So you may get people who are in self-contained classes, they're coming out without a high school diploma, and so that's going to be their first barrier that they're going to run into. I think there's also just a lot of people, we found that if students who go and start working while there's, students with disabilities who go and start working while they're in high school, have much higher rates of success when they get out of high school. So obviously we can start to increase the number of community work-based experiences while they're in high school. It's going to be better for them once they actually go and graduate or they finish. Plus, you know, they may not have an actual idea of what it's like to work. We say let's go out there and get a job, and most of us are very familiar with it, but it's, hey, no, you got to show up every day. When you get out there, you know, you got to take the initiative. You have to, you know, provide customer service. You have to do all these different things. You can't just sit there and slack off and be on your phone or going and talking to your friends or taking selfies or things like that. You know, give them a good idea of what work really means. I think understanding some different self-determination skills, right? So believing they can work. I've run into a lot of different people who I've just taught skills with, and they're kind of like, yeah, people, you know, my doctor told me I'd never really be able to work, or my parents don't think I can work, or the school teacher, somebody told me I can't work, and so they've gotten that in their head. You know, somebody from authority position or from an authoritative position told them they couldn't work, and so now they bought into that, and so just trying to make them realize, like, no, you can work, you have those abilities, and you know, there are resources out there that can help you overcome whatever barriers that you're facing. I think there's been a level on kind of going along with that of just having low expectations for people with disabilities, like, you know, oh, okay, well, they have a disability, they can't work, they shouldn't work, whatever the case may be, they're good to just go and sit around and do nothing all day. And that's not true. I think a lot of people with disabilities want to go out there and make a difference and have that fulfillment that work brings to you. But if you have other people with higher expectations, then it's not such a challenge for them. When you were growing up, did people say, you know, what do you want to do if you start working? No, they want to say, what kind of job do you want to get when you get old enough to start working? It's always when you start working. People with disabilities kind of like, well, if you work. Well, let's get rid of that if they're working. Let's have that expectation that, no, they're going to go work. Whatever they finish with, whatever they finish with an occupational diploma or the high school credential or the diploma, whatever the case may be, they should be working. We should be able to help find them jobs in whatever case they need, and inclusive, competitive jobs as well. All right, so I'm sure none of you are going to probably be able to read this. It's very small, but this is kind of what do employers say. So one, employers noticed that 59% of accommodations cost nothing, and 75% reported that accommodations were either very effective or extremely effective. So for employers, that idea of, oh, it's going to cost me a bunch of money to bring in somebody with a disability. They're going to need this, they're going to need that, and at the end of the day, I'm not going to be able to afford it, and then they're not going to keep working. That's not true. Accommodations usually are free, and if they aren't, you know, they do cost, it's a pretty minimal cost to a business. 92% of the American public view companies that hire people with disabilities more favorably, and 87% prefer to give their businesses to companies that hire people with disabilities. So that's kind of says right there, out there to companies, especially those that have a public face, know you want to hire people with disabilities because there are, you know, financial and I guess competitive edges that you're given to that. And then consistently rate employees with disabilities as average or above average in performance, quality, quantity of work, flexibility demands, attendance, and safety. So whereas I think a lot of people consider people with disabilities to be substandard workers, the facts tell a different story. And I think just letting employers know that is a big key. And that's something that we tell every time I do an employer presentation, we talk about that. So what's it going to take? We had the conversation up here. Who wants to change? Everyone wants to change. Like, who wants to make it change? Nah, not as much. Like, it's going to take a mindset from everybody. And I think if everybody pitches in, too, then that's where the differences happen. No one's going to, again, like, if you just try to live out there on an island and make all these changes yourself, it's not going to happen. We all have to work together. I think that's why I'm so happy to see everybody here, too. So the most dangerous phrase in the English language, we've always done it this way, which is really easy to say in the disability world. Like, you know, we've done it this way, it's worked, you know, we got people happy, or, you know, happy what they're doing, but is it really working? I think that's a question that we always have to ask ourselves. No matter what we're doing, in any aspect of our lives, in any aspect of what we're doing, you know, is this really working? Should we keep doing it the same way? And I think for us, clearly the answer has been not as much. We haven't been as successful as we'd like to be. Clearly, if 7 out of 10 people with disabilities aren't working right now, something's happening there. There needs to be a change made. So did you know in South Carolina work activity centers, there's over 2,800 people with disabilities making subminimum wage. So it could be as little as $1 an hour. Now these centers, they were created as a way to train people up to get them out into the workforce. But for some, some people have had success with it. And some of the centers have had great success and they've gotten people out there. Some of the people who have attended may not have had quite that success. And so, not to say what they're doing is wrong, but I think of it like this. When I was in school, I was not a great student because I had trouble sitting in class and paying attention for a long period of time. And so my grades suffered. Lo and behold, I realized I'm not a terrible student, it's just I didn't learn well that way. Well, guess what? A lot of people who may be in these centers, it's not that they can't work or they're not good at working, just they may not be able to find their niche with the way it's been put out there in front of them. So we may need to look at other ways of getting in there, such as supported employment and looking at actually customized employment, going out there, and that is a very time and work heavy kind of thing to do that, customized employment, but it will work for certain individuals and can be very successful.
Hey Chris, I noticed that last statement is from 2010. Is there nothing newer? That no one's done anything since 2010? That's 9 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a Sandy question. I don't know quite as much about where this data was pulled from or how often it's pulled. So
Yeah.
I wish I could give you a better answer, but I'm sorry.
You're thinking of the state would just try to keep those updated a little bit more than that. Whoever Migliore is.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll call Migliore. We'll figure out ways of going.
Yeah, there you go. Come on up tomorrow.
So let's start looking at the best practices for employment first. So obviously the answer is real work for real pay. I had gone to a center one time and basically the person was, they pushed a button and it took a roll of, it had like a spool of thread and it went from one spool to an empty thread, or to an empty spool, and it turned and so the spool came off and then they got done and they weighed at the end of the shift or whatever and they gave them like 14 cents a pound. And I asked the lady, I was like, so what do you guys do with the spool? Is it like something you're doing for like an organization, like just help them some way or another? And she's like, no. So what do you do like once it's done? She's like, well, just take the empty one off and switch it up to the full and put it on. Like, that's not work. Like, we're teaching them here. That's not anything that's really significant for them just to be able to push a button. And so I think that's where kind of that real work for real pay comes in. Workers with disabilities will go straight into the workforce or go straight into the community and make more money. So obviously they're going to be able to go out there and have a better If they're making, not sub-minimum wage, or they're making minimum wage or above, then they're gonna be making more money, obviously.
Chris, do we know, or even Mike, do we know if there's any state initiative on even just raising the minimum wage here in South Carolina? I think that's where it really kind of starts, because it's, the thing is it $6 or $7?
$7.25, I think, yeah.
$7.25.
So in South Carolina, we've tried to take the lead on it. It's been kind of a non-starter. We've worked to at least get a proclamation or like an announcement that, hey, we should start doing this. That took a lot of trouble. I think we were able to finally get that done, but we got a lot of pushback. There's a lot of state legislators that don't even believe minimum wage should be a thing for anybody. And so trying to get them off the sub-minimum wage has not been real easy. So it's turned into a little bit more of a fight than we expected.
That's too bad.
Well,
That's
I
very
think the
sad.
connection between sub-minimum wage, or the argument for sub-minimum wage and the argument of the rate of what the minimum wage is, seems like they're connected, but they're not as connected. The forces that are pushing for sub-minimum wage are not the same forces that are involved in setting a working wage for other folks. And I think part of the challenge, and this isn't a debate we need to have in this room, but I think part of the struggles of it is, you know what, we're not even going to go down that road.
Yeah. But yeah, and then people are going to have more satisfaction, more confidence that they're actually out there in the community, working with people that don't have disabilities and just being in an inclusive environment. So obviously we want to challenge any kind of expectations about people with disabilities and their ability to go out there and work. And I think it's, again, it says employment first is not about political correctness, right? It's about trying to get people to be the best that they possibly can be. And if we're going to get into the whole idea of any kind of partisan debates, it's really a nonpartisan issue if you really think about it. You're trying to get people off of any kind of benefits and getting them out there working and they're paying taxes. It's really good for everybody if you start to break it down. And then we also want to get away from any kind of terms like, is that person employable or educatable or work ready? Like I think everybody goes to those points at some point in their life, and so trying to simply attach those to people without or people with disabilities is not necessarily fair to them. Want to definitely assist people with understanding like the delivery methods of the services, especially with WIRA. So like how ABLE's services are provided versus SE Works services or versus Thrive Upstate services or other people that provide any kind of employment services. And then obviously if people start to understand their rights and their responsibilities, they're going to want to get out there and advocate for themselves and engage with them. Because if you tell them, like, hey, it's not going to happen for you because of this or this, then people are just not even going to try. But if you say, no, you have a right to this, you can go and do this, this is how you advocate for this, people are going to be more willing to. Because deep down inside, they want to, but you feel kind of handcuffed and unable to go out there and do those things when someone tells you you can't. You have to have that knowledge, that understanding. And then also, how do people want to be defined? We want to get away from the medical model of let's just fix it. There's a disability, there's something wrong, let's go and attack that and let's just focus on that. And let's actually come back and focus on the person, focus on the things that they're good at, focus on what their soft skills are and the things the types of jobs that they would excel in, instead of necessarily focusing on what the disability is. Because I hear that a ton too. A lot of questions will be like, okay, Chris, well, so the person came in and they have an intellectual disability. What role do you think they would be best for? I'm like, well, I don't know. I've never met that person. I don't know what kind of things they want to do. Like, focus on their abilities, or if they need a reasonable accommodation, then don't just focus on what's the best accommodation for this disability. Let's look at the actual functional limitation there, and then let's look at where they're having problems, and then figure that out together instead of saying, oh, well, that disability is not going to be good for that. It's really about opening our minds for so much of this. And then understanding that they do have a choice. You know, people have obviously all these different choices of routes that they can take in this room to be successful and to gain employment. They need to know all the different routes that are available to them in order for them to be successful. So again, who benefits from employment first? Employers benefit because now they have good employees. People with disabilities benefits because now they can benefit because they can go out and get a job and start earning money and start getting like health care benefits instead of just cash benefits from the government. Obviously the families are going to benefit because they're getting money in, but then they're also having someone who's being more active and taking up that kind of role in the family. The communities are going to benefit because one, you're starting to see people out there with disabilities in the workforce, and it's not quite as a shock to you when you do see somebody. But then also on that other end, you're getting money is coming back from them going out there and working, and they're getting that tax money coming in. And then taxpayers, the same thing. So instead of like paying towards somebody out there, now they're working, contributing back. So I think a lot of times it's easy for us to get caught up in the disability and the visual of it, right? Because if you look at the girl on the left, you're like, oh, well, she looks like she would be a great worker and we could bring her in. Seems like she has a really good personality. But then you may look at the picture on the right and say, oh, well, she's in a wheelchair, so that changes things. Maybe she wouldn't be as quite of a good worker, right? And so I think once you can kind of get past that, you'll understand, like, oh, she actually is a fantastic worker and she's done really good things with us and has been a fantastic advocate. This is another person, she has a few multiple disabilities, but she just made that decision in life that she was not going to go out and let her disabilities hold her back. And so she went out there and was like, I'm going to go out there and get into that competitive employment. And so that's what she's done. She's been very successful with it. I'm going to skip the movie just because we're running out of time. Another thing of what we've been doing as far as trying to get the word out there to employers, we've posted a few billboards across the state. I think we have 39, is the number? 39 different billboards across the state. So we had a video, this is actually up on the Hire Me SC website if you want to go through and check it out. But this is a young man, he went to Clemson Life and he graduated, he's successful, and now he's a manager over at Event Rentals in Anderson. And so this is somebody who came out with an occupational diploma, but they found a way, he kept working and kept a great attitude and used the services that were available to him, and now he's working in a competitive setting. I think it's going to fly. So for navigating the Hire Me SC website, we're going to just check that out real fast. Say yes to it. Just so you guys can get a little bit of a visual of it. So this is just the home page. And here you can choose, if you're a job seeker, if you're an employer, if you're a service provider, if you're an educator, here's just a quick way to get to those things that you're going to need. We have a lot of success stories because we want to show employers, yeah, we're saying all this stuff, but there's actually real success stories and there's real things happening behind it. It's not just us making this up. There's real people out there. You can learn a little bit more about Employment First or APSE, and then we have a lot of different statistics that you can choose from and go through and actually, this is just on the home page. If you go to each single page, you can find more statistics or more links to different statistics that are out there. We have our Employer Summit coming up in October, so try to bring in a lot of different employers. We've actually been successful. We've got a representative from SHRM who's going to be coming in and talking about how can we get past some of those barriers that we face as far as, hey, we require a high school diploma to bring somebody in. Well, we don't have a high school diploma, then they can't work. Well, how can we get past those things? And so he's going to talk about that. And then we got, a list of the different events that we have out there. I know we talked about in one of the last meetings we had about, we're having a disability benefits workshop, but people didn't know about that. And so if you want to know about the different things that we have going on, you can always check this out. Some different trainings that we're having throughout the state, really. And then any resources too that are available out there, job seeker resources, service provider resources, employer resources. Just go through and there's a ton of different links out there. All right, so some of the different activities we've been doing, we've had some pilot programs in different school districts. I've talked about the employer trainings. We have a local APSE chapter in the state, which is the associated people, person supported.
Persons in support of employment.
Yeah, there we go, yeah. See, that's another Sandy thing, it's not one that I did. And then we're trying to make the systemic changes. We have these workshops, we've had a study, and then we've also have our business coalition. We want to give businesses the ability to talk about these things and work with each other with these things without having the big bad service providers always in their faces telling them what they need to do. So we kind of created this as their own little space so that they can work among themselves when they have questions and don't want to come to us. How do you get involved? We have lots of social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If you have people that are interested in putting their story out there, success stories, so if you guys go back and you check out the website and look at all the success stories, and like, hey, I have somebody that would be great for that. We're always seeking out new people to put up on the website, put on social media. So you can just have them post something and then hashtag HireMeSC, or you can reach out to us and we can get that posted for them. And then any questions, again, don't send them to me, send them to Sandy. She's going to be the best person. Unless it's anything other than HireMeSC, I can answer for you.
I
Yes,
have a
Steve.
quick question.
Sure.
And also just a comment that most of the individuals who Pride Upstate serves are making well above minimum wage.
Right, sure, yeah.
In a couple different categories, as
Right.
an enclave and also independently, competitively employed. But the lead time for you to do presenters to employers, what generally is that? Do you need a couple weeks notice? I might want to talk to you about that. And I know you've done that with GHS and did a great job.
Okay.
Did you need like a couple weeks, and did they contact you, or can I contact you?
Wait, I was confused by your question.
The presentation to employers
Right.
about, sensitivity and culture and so on.
Sure, yeah.
When you do that, how much lead time do you need for that?
I think a couple weeks in minimum, just because schedules get backed up, just to kind of start getting that sorted out. Depends on what the presentation is and who's doing it. But yeah, at least a couple of weeks, usually a little bit more. And it depends on the time of year too. Obviously October is going to be like Indeed month, so that'll be a busy month, but it just depends. Yeah, just reach out to us, we'll get it figured out.
Thanks.
Yep. Any other questions? So I'm going to hand it off to Sam, who you guys are probably here to see. She has got she's got the goods.
Hey everyone, so I am the Certified Work Incentives Coordinator at Able South Carolina's Greenville office. What that means is that I do benefits counseling for people who receive disability benefits that are trying to figure out how going back to work is going to affect those benefits. That's one of the biggest barriers that we see. So Social Security recognized that, and they created a grant called the WIPA grant. It's Work Incentives Planning and Assistance. that allows us to do benefits counseling for these people so that they understand what's going to happen now and in the future. So I'm just going to cover real quick the process if anybody's interested in receiving those services, and then I'm going to go through some common myths regarding disability benefits.
And I'm sorry, could you say your name again?
It's Sam Riles.
S-A-M?
Yes, and R-Y-A-L-S. So if anyone is interested in receiving disability benefits, they need to fill out an intake packet like this, and I have some with me if anybody needs a copy. This will give me information about their work history, their benefits. It will also give me permission to verify their benefits with Social Security and Medicaid so that I make sure that I've got everything that I need to give them accurate information. Once they get this back to me, I do the verification process, and then it takes about 4 to 6 weeks for me to verify everything and do a report for them. Then I'm going to sit down with them and go through all of that information, answer any questions that they have, and then I'm available in the future as their situation changes. So I'm happy to help however I can. I don't get to make decisions. Social Security still gets to do that, unfortunately, but I'll do what I can to help. So as I mentioned, the WIPA grant was created by Social Security. We provide services along with Walton Options. They cover most of the counties in the Low Country, and Able, South Carolina provides services to the rest of the state. So anybody in the upstate we cover. If you have questions, if you have partners in other areas of the state, feel free to get in touch with me and I'll let you know if you need to come to us or to Walton Options, but we provide the same services. So most people think that they can't work because they have a disability. That's not the case. Social Security has actually created a lot of different work incentives. Chris already talked to you about the Ticket to Work program, so I'm not going to go into that one again. But in addition, they have different work incentives that will allow you to try going to work. For instance, Title II benefits, which is SSDI, CDB, or DWB benefits. They have a trial work period where they can make however much they want to for 9 months without seeing any effect on their benefits. SSI, they don't just automatically lose their benefits. There's a calculation that goes into it where they see a reduction based on how much they're working. And there's a lot of different work incentives that we can apply. So I look at everybody's situation and tell them what work incentives would apply to their situation and help them learn how to apply for those as well. So these are some individuals that have worked for our organization that are using work incentives. Laquanda uses impairment-related work expenses, which is anything that you have to pay for out of pocket related to your disability that allows you to go to work. So in Laquanda's case, she's able to use the cost for vehicle modifications that allow her to get to work. She's able to deduct that from her gross earnings to help her stay under substantial gainful activity. So she gets to deduct that whole cost. So substantial gainful activity right now is $1,220 a month. So it's really easy to go over. But if she has a couple $100 in impairment-related work expenses every month, that can help her easily get back under that while still working. Yes?
Could one deduct the cost of using Uber for transportation?
If the person is unable to drive themselves because of their disability, then you can deduct transportation costs.
Okay.
So it doesn't apply for people that just don't have a vehicle but are capable of driving themselves. So that's a big one, those transportation costs. Also, if your disability prevents you from using public transportation and you have to pay for special transportation, you can deduct that as well. Medication costs are often deducted. Dory has a service animal, so she's able to deduct the cost for things related to her service animal, like his vet bills, his food, things like that, from her monthly earnings. Eric is an individual who is blind, so he's able to take advantage of something called blind work expenses. They work a little bit differently than impairment-related work expenses. They can deduct more things from their wages. They also have different, individuals who are blind also have different earning limits, so we can go through all of that as well. All right, next myth. If I work, I will automatically lose my benefits. This is absolutely not the case. As I mentioned, the trial work period is a time when you can work and not lose your benefits. With SSI, you see a reduction based on how much you're working. And even if you're working, if you're not earning above these earning thresholds like substantial gainful activity, you continue to receive your benefit even though you're working. Another one that people are often worried about is their health care. There's work incentives that we're going to talk about too that allow you to keep your health care as well, so you don't immediately lose that. All right, so if I try to go to work, I'll automatically lose my Medicare or Medicaid. So when you are receiving a Title II benefit, that comes with Medicare. Medicare has a work incentive called the extended period of Medicare coverage. So if you are no longer receiving your cash benefit, you can still get Medicare for at least 93 months after your trial work period. So this gives you plenty of time to plan for getting your own health insurance. The thought being that within 93 months, you're going to obtain employment where health insurance is offered to you, or you'll be able to plan to get that on the marketplace. With SSI, that comes with Medicaid. Individuals who are no longer receiving their SSI cash benefit because of their work activity can still get Medicaid as long as they are earning under the 1619B threshold, which for 2019 is $31,138. That's quite a bit of money that they can earn and still keep their Medicaid. In addition to SSI Medicaid, we have a lot of different categories in South Carolina where you can receive Medicaid. So we can look at different categories to see if you'd be eligible as well. Just because you have Medicare doesn't mean that you can't also have Medicaid. You can be double covered. So we can look at those too. If I use my ticket to go to work, Social Security will conduct a medical review and I will lose my benefits. So the Ticket to Work program is a great program, but a lot of people are worried that when they're reporting that they're doing these services with Social Security is going to say, oh, well, you can go to work, so I'm going to do a medical review and we're going to kick you off your benefits. That's not the case. Actually, if you have assigned your ticket to VR or an employment network, then Social Security will not initiate a continuing medical review. They're thinking that you're making timely progress on your employment goals, so we're going to let you have that time to go ahead and continue doing that, because the hope is that eventually that job will lead you to be able to come off of your benefits. And they're not trying to kick you off while you're trying to work and get to where you need to be. If you have already had a continuing disability review initiated, you can't assign your ticket and say, okay, don't do it. They're going to continue doing that. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to lose your benefits. They're just checking in to make sure that everything is the same. ABLE South Carolina is an employment network, also SC Works, Vocational Rehabilitation, Goodwill. So there's a lot of different places that you can receive these services from. If my checks stop because I go to work and then I have to stop working because of my disability, I have to reapply for benefits all over again. This is not the case. There is an expedited reinstatement of benefits that you can apply for if your benefits have stopped because of your work activity. You have 60 months from when they have stopped where you can reapply. You get 6 months of provisional payments while they do a continuing disability review to see if you're still eligible. So that's much quicker than the initial application process. I'm sure some of you are aware. So this is a great work incentive for people, so they can go ahead and get that cash benefit cut back on while Social Security is looking into their case and go ahead and get reinstated. The IRS will notify Social Security about my work income. Anytime you are working and receiving disability benefits, it is that person's responsibility to report to Social Security. The IRS does not tell Social Security that, oh, hey, they're paying taxes, so they're working, and everybody knows what's going on. Eventually, the IRS is going to tell Social Security that you're working, and that's when you could potentially get into an overpayment situation. We don't want that to happen. We want to make sure that everybody is reporting monthly when they are working to Social Security. If you're getting a Title II benefit, you need to report by the 10th. If you're getting SSI, you need to report by the 6th. And I can help you understand how that needs to be done. But it is the person's responsibility. Just don't count on the IRS to report to Social Security for you. Social Security will automatically apply work incentives to my situation. It would be awesome if they would, but unfortunately they're not going to do that. You're going to have to put in a request for them. And when I do benefits counseling for people, I look at all of the work incentives that could apply and give them the information that they need to know how to put that in. So, for instance, with impairment-related work expenses, every month that person is going to need to submit receipts with a request so that they can be approved by Social Security. Social Security is not going to assume that just because you had work expenses last month that you have them again this month. So you're just going to need to continue doing that. But we can review all of that. And then I always tell people to keep copies of anything that you provide to Social Security just in case they lose it, so that you have something for your records that shows you did what you needed to do. As long as I report my gross wages and employment supports, I will never have to worry about an overpayment. again, it would be nice if this never happened, but sometimes Social Security misplaces things, or there's a lag between when you reported it and when they were able to process it, and overpayments can happen. But if you know what to expect and you know that you're not entitled to a benefit this month, then maybe you set that aside. And so if Social Security comes back to you and says, okay, we weren't owed that, you're like, okay, here it is. Or if you've been doing what you needed to do and still found yourself in an overpayment situation, you have a lot of power then to negotiate with Social Security to do a monthly payment instead of getting a letter that says, hey, you owe us $40,000, we'll take a check, because nobody has $40,000 waiting. So again, keeping records helps you avoid these situations where you have big overpayments. And in most situations, working is going to be better for individuals. For instance, with SSI, because there is a reduction based on how much you work, and it's not dollar for dollar, you're going to come out on top whenever you're working and getting SSI. With Title II, when they have all those work incentives that can apply, again, it's going to be better financially for you. And we'll be honest with you, unless you know that this is how things are going to look for you, and if it's not a better situation for you, we're not going to pressure you to do it. We want you to have all the information that you need to make an informed decision about going back to work.
Do you incorporate sort of the housing costs and the other costs, food stamps, if somebody is on a housing program, or food stamps or those things, into the formula for how you're rating whether or not this is an effective decision for them?
So when I have somebody fill out the intake form for me, I ask them if they're receiving housing benefits or SNAP benefits, and then I'll let them know how those benefits are also affected by work. I don't necessarily have a formula that says you're going to see this much of a reduction in SNAP and you're going to lose housing or anything like that, but I do help them understand that. And there are incentives that let you keep your housing assistance for a period of time when you're going back to work, so you don't immediately see a jump in your rent and things like that. And I can help them also learn how to apply for those.
And then in terms of managing all of these pieces, you know, in terms of making sure you're doing what you need to do with your pay stubs, and that you are also figuring out how it's going to affect how many more months I have before this changes and those things. Is that part of your service to help people to continue on for a period of time as they're at the initial consultation?
Right. My job is to provide you with the report and the information that you needed. So I don't check in with everybody each month and make sure that they're reporting their wages. If they're having an issue or they have a question, then I'm happy to help. But in that report, I tell you, okay, this is what's happening now. Maybe you're moving to this phase and they're going to look at something different. So I've laid out everything for them in that report. And then I do a work incentives plan that's basically a checklist of things that they need to remember to do. And again, I'm available. I just have a lot of consumers, so I can't check in with everybody and make sure they're doing that. But I do work a lot with job coaches or employment service providers that are maybe able to do that a little bit more. So I can work collaboratively with people so that we make sure they're doing what they need to do. Any other questions? Okay. I have intake packets if anyone is interested. I can accept them back to me via fax or regular mail. So if y'all want to just make copies for consumers, that's fine. Y'all can send them back to me, okay? All right.
Give them all a big